recording. Thank you again.
So are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, hello. We're the medical adapter team. My name is Meha Shivakumar, and I'm a junior.
My name is Jamie Holodnik, and I'm a senior.
And my name's Victor Pangburn, and I'm a junior.
Okay.
All right. So when it comes to the actual problem that we're trying to solve through our project, we want to help out the exploration medical team by creating something that is similar to the function of the Tempest Pro diagnostic tool. But obviously, we don't want it to have the large scope included. So when it comes to what we actually created, we made a compatible medical adapter that uses an ear specula with a fiber-optic camera that can act like an otoscope that you would normally try to use with the Tempest Pro diagnostic tool. So with the actual design requirements, we've kept basically the original requirements. We made sure that the barrel measurements are the same as specified. We still are using a Welch Allen specula with our modified design. And we've obviously done full 3D CAD replication, which we'll show you as we go on. And we're also using the Tempest Pro fiber optic camera tool.
So the reason why we are looking into this is that there are a lot of ear health issues that can arise from being in space, such as like severe inflammation of the ear, barotrauma, and paranasal sinus opacification. And there are like challenges in space where like you can't do a 2-person ear exam because you're floating around, so it's not stable. And also the microgravity causes the bodily fluids to move around in your head. And here's some existing technology that we found from Amazon. This one on the right is similar to the setup that we currently have.
All right, so when it comes to our design ideas, we've created a lot of brainstorming for both the adapter body and the actual speculum attachment. So this is just an overview of all of our ideas combined, but as we go forward, we're just going to focus more on the things that we have to this point.
Okay.
So our first idea for the actual adapter body is just a linear, straight, elongated adapter. This would essentially have the camera sliding into the bottom of the holder, and it would be made of a flexible material from the bottom to the top. It would also be disposable so that the top won't get dirty and sanitation issues wouldn't arise. So this is our second idea, which we did not end up considering. It was just expanding the fiber optic camera's view, but we had a time constraint, so we ended up dropping this. And for our third idea, this is our main idea that we've gone with. This is essentially similar to idea number 1, the straight adapter, except it's a bent body adapter. So this actually takes human factor into account because normally when you have a straight adapter, it's a bit hard to insert it into your ear because of the grip, but this has a flexible body material and it's also bent. So this will actually be a lot more helpful for when you're inserting it in your ear.
Okay.
So now for our actual ideas for how we want the specula to attach, because we want it to be stable on the adapter when it's being inserted. Our first idea was a mechanism, which is a twist and lock. So we have a base for the specula that once you attach it on it and you twist it, it locks in place and it stays secure for when you're using it. And our second specula idea was one that we also dropped. This was essentially just stacking 2 speculas on top of each other. But this raised concern because this wasn't very stable when we were testing it. And if it's not very stable on Earth, that only brought more concerns to what the conditions of microgravity might do with this in space.
Okay.
So now for our criteria and constraints, these are mainly just adapted from the project guidelines. Our criteria is using flexible material so the cable is able to bend and function properly. We want our holder to properly fit the entire CMSS imager, and we also want it to be compact and easy to use. And for constraints, we obviously do not want to attach our parts by an external material like glue. And since we're not attaching it by anything, we want it to be easily removable and not hard to take out. And we also want the speculas to be single use for sanitation issues.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to our decision matrix, we ended up between idea number 1 and idea number 3. If you recall, idea number 1 was our straight linear adapter, and our idea number 3 was just a bent flexible adapter. So we did have two ideas for the specula attachment, but we took out the double specula and we just focused on our twist and lock. So it came in between idea number 1 with the twist and lock and idea number 3 with the twist and lock, which we ultimately decided on idea number 3 for its universal design, and it's just taking in human account with its unique grid. So this is basically just a visual representation of what I just explained. Idea number 1, which is our straight adapter body, and idea number 3, which is our bent body, which we ultimately ended up going with idea number 3.
Okay.
So here is a very initial prototype of our bent body with no 3D printing, just a straw and some paper. So this kind of
Okay.
shows the initial idea. And here is our CAD drawing of our fiber optic camera. So we wanted to make a fiber optic camera to be used for testing, since buying one or getting one was out of the question.
They're pretty expensive.
Yeah. So we want to simulate the flexibleness of the camera while still having the barrel be sturdy like the metal. So what we did was we split it into two parts, one being made out of a flexible TPU material and the other being just PLA, and they fit together to make our fiber optic camera testing.
Okay. How are you fitting them together?
Just a tight fit, where the dimensions are very close, so they just when you push them together, they don't come unattached.
Okay.
So this is our first cover, the straight one with the twist and lock. And here is a closer look at the twist and lock and the dimensions of it. And we made sure to cover the entire fiber optic camera.
Okay.
Down here is the bent one. As you can see, it still has the same length for the camera part cover, but it is bent as to make it easier to hold.
Okay.
And here's another close-up of the twist and lock. So here is our little animation showing how the cover will work by fitting onto our CAD model of the fiber optic camera and also
Okay.
twisting off the specula. So this is another animation showing a more close-up of how the specula will go easily on and off and stay in place while it's on.
Okay.
So so it looks like there's a little clip on it that it spins into and locks. So, okay, that's nice.
So here is our CAD model of the straight and the printed straight adapter after printing it. And here's our CAD model of the bent adapter and the bent adapter after printing it.
Okay.
So now that we have printed of both adapters and a printed fiber optic camera test, we could go into testing. And so the first testing was just the basic putting the straight cover over the fiber optic camera and making sure it fit.
And is that just a snug fit as well, or what kind of fit is that?
This is also a snug fit, yes.
Okay.
However, the camera is not snug, so not to squeeze it. It's just snug on the actual body. So this is a endoscope. So it has very similar dimensions to the fiber optic camera lens. So we use this to test how an actual camera would see in it. And we'll show you a demonstration of this later. And this is testing with the bent adapter. However, one thing you can see with the bent adapter is that though it goes through the first turn, the second turn is too major. And this is one of the flaws we noticed in testing that we will have to fix.
Yeah, because you're trying to make sure that that fiber optic camera doesn't get pulled backward. Like you want it to stay at the end by the specula.
Yes. So here's our twist and lock prototype testing. Okay, so as you can see, we're able to easily put it on and twist it off. However, as you can also see, it slightly bends when you put it on, and this may lead to wear and tear, just meaning that we need to make sure our dimensions are completely correct so that there's no bending when putting it on.
Okay.
So this is our first refinement of the design, is that we need to find the best angle to have the adapter at so that it's the easiest to hold for everyone.
All right, so for our second refine, we want to simulate the design of bending points of the plastic straw because as Victor mentioned, it's not able to go through the second major curve. So if we can use a straw in the testing process to kind of gain inspiration, this will help us greatly. And here is kind of a demonstration of the flexibility that we're trying to test.
Next, we need to enhance the twist and lock structure and use a mixed material of TPU and PLA, which prevents the wear and tear on the base of the specula attachment.
So the last thing is in the actual CMAC imager, that's not shown in our model, is that but beneath the base is a sort of offshoot where the laryngoscope connects there, and this prevents it from going too far down. So adding this to our cover, it will be helpful in the future.
All right, and we have one last refining design. So since the endoscope camera has the same exact diameter as the actual imager, the light and camera positions are different. So we kind of want to test for the visibility in case this damages it in the end turn.
So there were some issues with So there were some issues with 3D printing. One of the things was making sure the supports of the bent one did not go inside the actual tube because they were impossible to remove when inside there, but still making sure we have supports so that in this first picture, it does not cave in. And also the TPU supports, since they're flexible, are very difficult to remove. So we also ran into that difficulty.
All right, so this is just kind of a brochure that gives an overview of our entire project. Most of this is just a summary of our purpose and as well as what we've designed. And as you can see, we also have our team photo here.
Okay.
All right, are there any questions from the judges?
Right. I have a couple of questions. So I know that you're wanting to be able to bend it at that angle, and you're looking at the straw kind of bent for, inspiration on that. My concern is that you're not going to actually be able to bend the fiber optic camera to that level. That may prove to be difficult to do. It might just be slightly bendable, but not to that extent. So how are you going to test to find out if that's actually going to work for you guys?
Right, so we think that may require refining the angle that we've kind of created, because as we mentioned, it was already hard enough for the straw to go through that. So it might be a little bit too acute for it to actually come through. This is
Yeah.
kind of like a mock prototype we have. If we were
Mhm.
able to make the angle maybe not as harsh, but maybe
Mhm.
like a little bit less bent, we may be able to
Mhm.
just test if the fiber optic camera can go straight through without getting damaged. But that's
Okay.
definitely something that we'll keep in account when we redesign.
Okay. And then my other thing is, I know you were looking at how the laryngoscope was attached, that laryngoscope blade was attached. But it's also there's no issue with just making it into a snug fit over the CMAC barrel. And one thing that you could do is to add like an O-ring, something like that around on the inside of your cover, so that whenever you have make the fit, it's snug and snug enough where it's not going to pop off, and it just kind of helps keep that seal on there as they're working with it. So that's a possibility too. And then my only last concern is just making sure that you're actually able to keep the fiber optic camera stable within the specula, right? So that you can actually ensure that it's not going to be pulling back, or anything like that from it. Makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if we can keep the base of the fiber optic camera stable, by making sure it can't go backwards, I think that'll help a lot with that.
Okay. That's all my concerns or comments on that. How about Cody or Nancy?
No, I'm good. I like what they did. I like their little I like how you were trying to get the specimen, attached, and that you did notice that there's going to be wear and tear and that you're looking at other materials. I thought that was a good way of approaching that.
I noted your comment on trying to mix materials. Sometimes that can be pretty difficult with the TPU. So instead of mixing materials, think about maybe, as Alli mentioned, like either an O-ring or some other feature that you can add to the assembly to make sure that you have less wear and tear on the attachment to the speculum. So keep that in mind as you work. But other than that, it looks like you're making good progress and keep up the good work.
Mm-hmm. Good
Yeah.
job. Yeah,
Alright,
really
so
good.
Okay. All right. Why don't we go on to the next team?
Can we make sure that they send me that brochure that they
Yes.
made?
Yep. So if you guys
I'm
can,
gonna give you a 10 seconds demo how this going to the exam the actual year. Well, 3D model year.
Okay,
so
well,
this is our straight adapter design, and this is our endoscope. So obviously we don't have our bent one yet, but this is just a 3D printed ear that's very realistic because it is to scale of the human ear. This is showing what exactly the fiber optic camera is seeing. So when I insert it, you can actually see that there's a lot of coverage. I'm not sure if you can really see what's going on. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera, but if I'm able to rotate it, it also changes this perspective.
They made a video out of it, so I send
Yes.
send along for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is, because remember, we're limited with time, is definitely do the video, include a QR code on the brochure, and with the QR code, include that video, so that way we can look at that, but that's very good to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, nice work.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Okay. Yeah, so once you bring your presentation up, what you want to do is introduce yourself, your team members, and let us know the name of your presentation. And like I told the other team, you have 15 minutes. So you want to make sure you hit the key points.
And I would also recommend you don't need to go through what the problem statement is or what the constraints are, because we know what that is. We just want to see what your solution ideas are.
Okay. So my name is Sanvi Patel, and I'm working on this psychological evaluation using AI. And I'm working on this project with Emma Huang and Katie Kai, who unfortunately can't present with me today.
Okay.
And so this is just a problem, but I'm going to skip over that. Currently for our phase 1, we're working on voice recognition and identifying stress in astronauts, and then requirements and constraints. I'm going to skip over that as well. And so for our generative AI tools, the research we have done so far is we initially worked with software like Microsoft Azure and Alexa for astronauts as a potential software, but we deviated off that path and focused on the latter three. And so we use Julius AI as a source that can provide results that we can compare our AI model with. And then we use Jupyter Notebook as our coding software to create our code. And then we use the Hugging Face database to eventually incorporate stress detection models into our AI. And so while doing research, I came across a research paper that had a flowchart we wanted to mimic with artwork. And so hopefully you can see my mouse, but they started with the input and they used the DIAC dataset from the University of Southern California. And that dataset was something that we also wanted to use for our AI model. And then after that, they incorporated some data pre-processing, which we decided to also do in a little bit of a unique way. But then moving on to the algorithm, they decided to do model training. And then for their performance analysis, they used 4 factors, which was accuracy, precision, recall, and F1 score. And for our AI model, we're currently working on 2 of those factors, which are accuracy and precision. And we're hopefully going to incorporate all 4 in our later processes. And then as you can see, for their output, they output stress level predictions, which is something we also want to mimic with our methodology. And so this, using the flowchart from the research paper, we created our own workflow. And so I'm just going to go over it real quick because I did talk a little bit about it with the previous research we did. So we're identifying our research data, which, as I mentioned, was the University of Southern California datasets, as well as other YouTube videos and audio recordings of astronauts on the ISS. And then from there, we found a suitable tool to analyze our data. And we used Jupyter Notebook to be able to compile all our code, as well as other processes to analyze our data. And then from there, we continued doing research and just understanding the psychology and how it can play a role in AI. And then from there, we used proper AI tools to clean our data from astronaut transcripts. And that was just taking an audio recording and turning into a transcript for us to analyze. And all that kind of just led us to developing an AI model, which is what we're currently working on for emotion detection. And that led us to be asking the question of, is our AI model learning? And so from there, we had another flowchart to see if our AI model is learning. And what we defined as learning was if our AI model is accurate, and if the results aren't accurate, is it changing its methodology to become accurate. And so if the answer was no, we're going to have to revisit our code and our methodology and apply new procedures to make sure that it is learning. And if it is learning, we can continue training our AI model with real astronaut transcripts. Another kind of side project is that we can collaborate with another Dawai Space Farmer group that's presenting after us that's working on cortisol. And so what they're doing real quick is they're working with hormones, a stress hormone called cortisol, to identify stress in astronauts. So they're focused on the more biology aspect. And if we can focus on the more AI and voice detection aspect, we can kind of combine them to work together to just provide the best results for astronauts. And then from there, our final research was going into sentiment analysis. And so that just allows large text to be analyzed for positive, negative, and neutral sentiment. And it's a part of the natural language processing and machine learning to analyze and interpret text. And so the polarity ranges from -1 to 1, and it just uses a lexicon-based approach to identify sentiment. And so from there, we created our AI model architecture of how we wanted our code to be structured. And so for our input, we use the DIAC WAS dataset from the University of Southern California, as well as ISS downlink YouTube videos from astronauts. And from there, we pre-processed either the dataset from the university or the YouTube video, and then performed sentiment analysis and found the polarity. Or for the YouTube video, we took videos and did some data augmentation where we changed the pitch and the frequency to help provide better results. And then from there, we got our output of stress patterns. So we currently have the output of either low, neutral, or high stress detection. And so kind of going back to our AI models learning, we want to make sure we're doing a performance analysis to make sure the AI model is learning. So for example, if the first time we have our output, it is accurate 10% of the time, but in further models, it's accurate 20% of the time. We want to make sure it's like constantly improving and becoming more accurate. And so for our results, we started off with coding our sentiment analysis code. And so the initial results we got is on the right-hand side with this graph here. And when we compared it to the results of Julius AI, we found it wasn't exactly the same results. So we kind of wanted to go into the code and see where we were off. And what we noticed was that different libraries can do sentiment analysis. So we wondered if libraries may be a difference, or whether we had to reformat our graph and our data to mimic Julius AI more. And so our second run around, we used the text blob library, and we reformatted our data to be more similar to Julius AI, with the number of data points and just the x-axis and the y-axis being more similar increments. And what we found was much more accurate results. And then from there, we took the sentiment polarity and created stress level predictions. And so what we did was, if the sentiment polarity fell within a certain range, we would label it as high, neutral, or low stress. And then based on the entire data set, each text value was given either a high, neutral, or low kind of label. And what we found the overall percentage for that, which you can see in this image over here. So that was kind of our first prototype and just our initial way to identify stress. And so throughout this process, we found some innovative ideas and kind of tried to think outside of the box. And so for our first constraint was using NASA acronyms. When we initially searched up NASA acronyms and tried to find a list, there wasn't anything that popped out that gave clear NASA acronyms that we could incorporate into our AI. And to kind of just combat that, we used the ISS downlink videos that had astronauts talking with NASA vocabulary. So hopefully when our AI model could process that, it could just gain the vocabulary from the transcripts and just have a better understanding of NASA acronyms. And then for our second constraint, we had to include acoustic and semantic voice stress patterns. And so we went to Julius AI and asked what was the best way to change your pitch and frequency to allow it to understand the audio better. And so as you can see, Julius AI recommended a certain pitch shift and cutoff frequency to just allow the audio to be processed better. And then lastly, for our last constraint, we needed to take into account that astronauts may have elevated CO2 cabin levels, and that might affect their voice. And to do that, we want to train our AI model to tell the difference by analyzing normal data sets and elevated CO2 data sets and comparing results. And to do this, we considered our normal data sets to be the University of Southern California data sets that were done here on Earth and have normal CO2 levels. And for elevated CO2 data sets, we changed the pitch and allowed Julius AI to change the audio to mimic what elevated CO2 levels would be. And so when I was talking about YouTube videos and eventually having that turn into our AI, go into our AI model, we have to turn those videos into a transcript. And to do that, we just made a little bit of a workflow to get that done. And so we turned the YouTube video into an MP3 file, and we were able to split that into chunks for analysis and use an OpenAI to take each chunk separately and analyze it, and then just take the dialogue and turn it into a transcript. And we were able to have the transcript have timestamps and identify different speakers. And that was saved as a CSV file for us to use our AI model on. And so this kind of shows how we took regular videos and used our Python code to turn into elevated CO2 levels. So I'm going to play a video. I'm not sure if you guys can hear, but hopefully this works. Just
Okay, yeah, we're not able to hear the video, but yeah, why don't you
I can
go ahead and
explain it.
continue? Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, well, basically what it's doing is Julius AI is just taking the video and it is performing pitch shifts and frequency changes to just mimic elevated CO2 levels. Okay, and so for our plans for our next step, something we want to do is do more research and figure out which stress levels actually pose risk to astronauts. So currently the ranges that we have are based on sentiment polarity and just knowing the fact that low sentiment means you're using negative words, which can be correlated to stress. But we want to have more evidence and do more analysis to really support when we're providing the results that stress levels are high. And to do that, we want to incorporate Hugging Face stress detection database. There are a lot of database and models in Hugging Face that have stress prediction and have models that we can incorporate into our AI that does a much further analysis to get the prediction. And we also currently our audio to transcript code and our sentiment analysis code is in 2 separate places. So we want to combine it so the process can be audio to transcript to sentiment analysis instead of having it in just 2 separate places. And so this is our brochure. It just kind of gives a quick overview about what I was talking about with why we chose to do this, our initial ideas, and just how we were innovative with our AI model. And then the QR codes just is a link to our GitHub, which just has all the code we've been working on so far. And this is just questions that I have for you. Maybe if you have any questions for me, you can let me know, and then I can ask afterwards. I'm not sure how much time I have.
Yeah, so Alli, why don't you go ahead and ask questions? Because I think the codes and AI models, those might be better for Michael to answer.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you have those here.
Yeah, and I actually wrote myself a note to email Michael in regard to your team. I think it sounds really interesting, everything that you're looking at. And so I did notice, and I heard you say that you wanted to get some better information or data for the high stress levels, because it did look like the percentage between neutral and high was like kind of very close to each other. Did you?
Yeah.
And okay. And so you're looking to improve that data as well, correct?
Definitely. Yes, definitely. We're definitely hoping to use different processes just besides sentiment analysis.
I gotcha. Okay. That sounds great. Are you looking to be able to add, facial recognition into this voice recognition? Or, I mean, I know that you're doing a lot with the voice recognition part, but are you looking to try to add that in so that you can get both sides?
Yes, we definitely are. We kind of split into 2 phases, with like phase 1 being the voice and phase 2 being the face. And so currently we're still in phase 1, but we definitely want to try out facial recognition because we think it's definitely a huge part of just analyzing stress is being able to read like an astronaut's face. So we're definitely going to try to get that into our AI model.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that goes on with the eyes whenever you're talking about any kind of emotion. So it would be really good for that. But I like how in depth that you're going with all of this.
Thank you.
I'm not the software person, so this will definitely be something for Michael, and Nancy is recording this, so he'll be able to listen to all of this as well. So I know that you're going to get a lot of great answers and comments back from him.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think these are good questions for him.
Yeah, my only comment is with the section you talk about the 3 ideas you were looking at the constraint. That is a lot in addition to your next step. So what I would do is prioritize them. Maybe look at the first, pick 1 or 2 to do along with your next step, so you have a complete set, and then go back to your constraints. Because but you guys you're doing amazing in this short time. All right, let's go ahead and bring the last group up.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, and I definitely need y'all's brochure as well.
Yep. Yeah, I'll make sure Lisa will send it out to all of us. So, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they're one of the groups who had asked. So.
Some you probably want to out there when they switch to a camera, so come back in.
Yeah.
So. How do we know how to switch the camera?
Oh,
yeah, we do. Okay.
From the document to the document camera?
Yeah, when they need it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll give it our time.
All right. So you guys you need to keep track of the time because you only have 10 minutes now because we have another team coming. So what you want to do is focus on what you guys have done that's new, because remember, we've seen this last year, and I think your main focus is on the app. So there may be some pages you guys can skip over, but we want to see the new stuff you've done.
Yeah, so we're the Cortisol Biosensor lab, and this year we're working on integrating AI as well as voice assistant integration into our device from the previous year, which is the Cortisol Biosensor and MIT app. And this is just a review of like what we did last year.
So this is basically like a storyboard comic of how we imagined like our device to be used. So on the ISS, but basically the top left panel you can see the astronaut lifting weights, and the right panel he's asking the device that we made to check the cortisol levels. And as you can see, Alexa in this certain case suggested that because his cortisol levels are high, he should try napping or yoga. And then he took its advice and now has cosmic tranquility. So the problem that we're trying to actually solve, that we're basing our whole project around, is how can we use AI to monitor and provide feedback on astronauts' health when communication with mission control is not possible?
Yes, this is our year 3, what we're going to be doing. So we're doing like a DHSAG, in a word, like we're going to do a digital for this year. We're going to introduce conversational AI voice interface. So what we believe our purpose this year is to create like a Cortisol Alexa skill kit for astronauts. So we can integrate it up in the ISS using current features in progress, and also integration it with the AI team with emotional detection using voice and facial features. So this is for our research from the beginning of the year. We are going to incorporate a recovery model. So for after investigation, we found that like this is a very mental health based feature that we have to do. So first we have to use like first person language is best to have a critical it's critical to have a recovery based model. So it's examples like don't use just to refer to them, and also to not use certain mental health terms like crazy. And from our research that we did, we've designed conversationals and responses that we could provide for the astronauts.
So in our phase 1, when we first started working with Alexa, we wanted to make sure that Alexa could recognize and respond to our voices. So we had programmed intents, which are the elements that we tell Alexa to ask. And we also have the utterances, which is what Alexa's listening for when we talk. So if I play this video real quick.
Can't hear anything.
Yeah, we can't hear anything. Why don't you guys just tell us what it did? Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
it's a little hard to hear the
we
video.
talk into the Alexa, and as you can see on the screen, it receives what we said and like writes it out, and then later on, while it's analyzing it, it responds with the programmed response. So on phase 2, what we wanted to make sure is that Alexa could respond to multiple voices, various questions, and also have an update on cortisol levels. And what we realized is that in the previous one, we had to ask Alexa to ask cortisol if the cortisol levels are healthy and good. But here we could just remove that part. So as you can see on the right, here's a bunch of pre-programmed questions that we could ask the Alexa. And here's another video of one of our team members asking the Alexa a different question with a different voice, and it's still responding.
Also a different device.
On a different device as well. So what we did is we had the app from last year and over the summer that we worked on. We wanted to implement this Alexa thing into the app. So on the screen that shows the weekly cortisol levels, we added an analyze and send to Alexa button. When the user presses the analyze button, it analyzes the data and shows in the text box between if the cortisol levels are high, normal, or low. Then when the user presses send to Alexa, it sends the data to a cloud where Alexa can access the data. So here's more on that. When the button's pressed, the data goes to the cloud. When the user talks to Alexa, the Alexa receives the data from the cloud to respond to the user on the Alexa device. So when we wanted the Alexa to respond to the user, we wanted to make sure we're using dialogue that the astronauts would be comfortable with, because not always you're going to get good news. You might get negative results. So we did research and found what kind of language and tone to use when talking to astronauts, or like talking to people that might be receiving bad news. And we implemented that into the code. And whenever the cortisol levels are high, we wanted to make sure that we could give them suggestions on what they could do to lower their cortisol levels. So Alexa asked the astronaut, hey, do you want any suggestions? And if the astronaut says yes, then we have a list of activities that were scientifically studied to prove and reduce cortisol levels. And when we wanted to test the Alexa and app integration, we wanted to make sure that they could connect, and yeah, we could test it. But unfortunately, before testing the Alexa, we have to create a skill and send updates to Amazon. But during the process, we'd always be stuck on building skills. So we're still working on a workaround for that.
Yeah, that's the problem with like the software.
Yeah, it's a problem with the software. For our next steps, though, we want to implement speech recognition into the app itself, where the astronaut could verbally and communicate instructions without physically tapping buttons on the app and still navigate through it.
And this is our brochure. It basically gives an overview of what we did for past years and what we're gonna now, but focusing more on the Cortisol app and using AI Alexa, as well as giving overview of the Alexa skill kit.
Okay.
Yeah, and these are just questions we have for you. So like one of them was like, would it be helpful for the app to like suggest modifications on like daily routines based on cortisol trends throughout the day? Or do astronauts like have a strict daily routine that they have to follow so that would like impede their daily life?
So I mean, their schedule is pretty tight. They're given a schedule every day that's basically 15 minutes apart. So, but I think it's always, I like having different suggestions, for them that maybe in their quiet time or private time that they could do some different things that might help reduce their cortisol levels. So, I don't think it's a bad thing to do. I just can't guarantee that the crew would actually do it, just because that's them. But, this is also anything that we do for space is always looked at for how it's going to benefit Earth as well, right? So, I mean, these are good things to keep in mind for the normal population, which would then be a good thing to have, for that.
Yeah, and thank you. So our second question is like, would it be beneficial to add like a therapeutic feature? So like venting and all that stuff, as well as giving like one of those like AI therapy bots, but like a virtual assistant in that way. Like, but are there like specific health criterias that would affect like its making or usage?
That's a very good question that I'm not really sure how to answer. Do y'all have any comments, Nancy or Cody, on that?
I mean, I think when you say therapeutic features, I like the fact I think you're incorporating some of that already in that, rather than, I like your comment, rather than telling the astronauts you're going crazy, you tell them, okay, you're stressed, here's things you can do. So you are in essence, I think, already doing that, because you're providing features and different ways for them to deal with their stress. So I think that you're actually doing. Are there specific health criteria that I would just research that? I mean, you say like CDC rules, do some research and you could probably find some more. And
we had one more question. So how often is AI used on the ISS in terms of communicating with astronauts real time? Like an expansion on this question is like when an astronaut can't actually talk with a real person on the other end, whether it's someone in the ISS or someone on Earth, how often is AI used, or how often do they use AI to actually talk with them?
I don't think NASA's using AI as much as the rest of the world. It's very restrictive right now. They have a small group looking at it. So we're not using AI. The astronauts are always talking to a person.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is more in line with when we start looking at long duration missions, and we're not going to have just immediate access to someone to answer these questions, right?
Yep.
So,
Exactly. Yep.
so
Yeah. So I do have one last question for you. I was going to ask Frontier if you guys can mute. But you mentioned about the analyze button. I was just curious about that because I thought the cortisol level was always, I'm assuming the cortisol level is always being recorded. But when you say analyze, at that point, you're having, I guess, the Alexa look at it and provide feedback at that time.
Yeah, so the Alexa would be looking at trends and seeing if the overall the cortisol levels are usually high or low, or it's not an
All right.
absolute value, it's more like a trend over the past.
Okay, that's why I was wondering. So, all right, no, that
So-
sounds.
I have one more thing to comment on. Okay, so I definitely would make sure that you are looking at the normalized graphs for what a normal person is supposed to have cortisol wise going into the circadian rhythm. Okay, because if you're looking at what's happening to your cortisol level, like in the evening before you're getting ready for bed, it's starting to drop. It should, okay, for a normal person, start to drop off. Okay, and then your body is actually producing natural melatonin, which is helping you to get to that sleep phase, right? And then as you're waking up, your normal melatonin levels will decrease and your cortisol levels will increase. And the whole idea of that is so that you can wake up, okay, and kind of get a start to your day. So I don't know if you guys have looked at that. Have y'all looked at any of that kind of graphical information about what your normal cortisol levels should be looking like throughout the day?
I think yes, we have.
Yeah, we've done research on that.
Yeah, especially from like last year with like testing the biosensor. We definitely did like tests on different individuals as well as like looking at the trends that for normal and unhealthy individuals.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you're keeping that in mind, because that's what should be able to tell you if they're off, right? If they're outside of that normal trend, then that's what should tell you if their cortisol levels are really off or not really. They're normal.
All right. All right.
Okay.
So great. Nice work. And then Lisa, just make sure to get the brochures to all of us. I'm going to stop recording because the next group of teams, Alli, they're all straight biomedical. They're not biomedical and AI.
Okay.
So I'm going to
All
stop
right.
recording.
Sounds good. Thank y'all.